An eerily organized assortment of massive rock slabs weighing several tons has garnered intrigue and confusion for thousands of years. With its origins dating back to the Neolithic Age, it's a marvel of construction. It almost seems humanly impossible for the time period, raising questions about its origin, purpose, and the potential for supernatural involvement. Today, we're looking into the history of Stonehenge. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me, very likely having heard about this case for the not first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Bunch of stones just up there chilling. No one knows why.
That's an apt description. Just a bunch of stones chilling up there.
They're just chilling up there. We don't know how they got there. That's Stonehenge. People go there, they take photos, and they're just a bunch of big stone heads.
No, there's no heads. That's Easter Island.
So it's like the pillar, and then it has like the top, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And there's like a various formation. I'll break it all down for you because honestly, there's a lot more to unpack than I realized here. But yeah, Stonehenge, an ancient monument of mankind. Obviously, somehow it got there. We're going to explore all of that. But I'm really curious, as we get into the theories, there's a lot of interesting answers behind those. And of course, it's another one of those fun episodes where we look at something really, really interesting that raises a lot of questions because of the sheer nature of it. There are gaps in the knowledge. And wherever there are gaps in the knowledge, there are a lot of really interesting theories that attempt to fill those gaps. And of course, you know what Stonehenge is, but I'm really curious what you do know now. So we'll kind of find that threshold and then go beyond it from there.
I feel like it's just an artiste of the time with money. And they wanted to make something that they thought was prolific, that would stand the test of time. And they did that. I mean, because if I had just FU money,
okay,
I'd first mess with my friends. That's first and foremost. I'd send Christian to space.
Wonderful. Great. Absolutely.
Okay. Give him an offer he couldn't refuse, send him to space.
Which, by the way, can I just step in to say, the offer you can't refuse is historically in The Godfather, threatening to kill the person.
That's true.
Not offering a deal that's too good.
Oh, it sounds like you're just paying me to go to space. That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, right? I paid to go to space.
Whew.
Tell me how it was. And then also what I would do is just start doing a bunch of random stuff that I know could possibly confuse people today, tomorrow, decades from now. Just real random things. What? No idea. No clue whatsoever.
But we'll find out.
You'll find out. I don't know. Just start buying a bunch of Ho-Ohs. Cause a shortage.
Okay. The boo-boos are gone.
Everyone's like, who's buying all these Ho-Ohs? We don't know. We have no idea. But there's a shortage now.
Someone will pin it back to the death of Alfredo Diaz. The market went wild.
Yeah.
And we don't know how exactly.
No.
But suddenly a bunch of cryptic mechanisms were triggered across the world. Giant stones appeared. Christian went to space.
Yep.
And shortages everywhere.
A series of levers that will start activating upon my death.
Okay. I like this. And I like that it's cryptic. You don't spill those beans. We'll all just have to find out. I do also love the idea. I'm deeply in love with it. That a human from the Neolithic Age had FU money. I'm picturing a near Neanderthal, in a suit, zipped up tight. They got the tie on. Maybe an ascot even, but they're still in like the farming age. They're just crossing into the Stone Age. The wheel isn't around yet, but they still have FU money. I don't know what they invested in, carrots maybe, but they've got it. This was somebody centuries ahead of their time, millennia ahead.
Right. Well, you got to think like every generation, no matter how far back, has got to have like the brilliant mind of that generation.
Oh, you're right.
And maybe this was just the brilliant mind of that generation. I mean, because it's a bunch of stones with like a top. It's not like the most insane intricate design that you've ever seen. It's just how to get there. I don't know. People get bored. They do really random stuff.
That's true. That's very true. And I think that that is something that as long as humanity has been around, we've been putzing around just doing what we could because we were bored, and some of it lasted, you know? Well, as we dive in, there are a lot of interesting theories behind Stonehenge. Many of them are grounded in its structure, its purpose, and its mysterious origins. In reality, I could honestly do like a 62-part TED Talk about all the finer details of Stonehenge because there really are a lot of nooks and crannies, analyses, and things on Stonehenge. But for today, we're going to focus on the unknown. And as such, I'm going to walk you through the high-level overview of Stonehenge, things you probably know about, but then I'm going to walk you through its general layout, the size of these stones to really give you the scale. And then we're going to wrap up with the modern understanding of its creation, how it was brought to being, and all of that. And then this will serve as our foundation for exploring, our final discussion, the theories behind this ancient stone monument, its purpose, and how it might have come to be. But before we dive in, as always, there's a lot going on here at RedWeb HQ. This week on redwebpod.com, we have another movie club coming out on Friday. That one's actually still up in the air. If all goes according to plan, it could be weapons, but we've got a couple in the bank. Donnie Darko's on the way, a lot of good ones coming. Also, importantly, this Wednesday, we're going to post a quick update on the status of all the stretch goals that you guys earned on the 5-year stream. In short, though, just while you're here, the stretch goals will be rolling out starting soon and then releasing on a cadence of every few weeks over the course of the next couple months as we gear up for production, get studio spaces, and all that sort of stuff for some of the larger ideas. But we wanted to make sure that you guys know they're coming, they're happening as soon as possible, and then, again, they'll be trickling out over time. So stay tuned. We're very excited to get started on those things. And again, we'll try to stay ahead of releases so you know when they're happening and when to expect those. But with that, let's talk about Stonehenge, a mystery, an oddity, a monument that has captured, honestly, my attention, my heart since I was a wee child. And of course, Stonehenge is an arrangement of large, megalithic structures and stones located in Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England. And as always, Fredo, I have a photo for you. If you want to take a look right here, it is our first image of the video. And of course, if you're not watching the video version on Spotify or YouTube Task Force, you can find these images on social media at RedWebPod.
I guess, the questions that I would have would be, do we know of these stones? Because they all have a very similar shape. And so do we know if these stones were carved or chipped down to fit this form in any way?
It's a good question.
I know, over time they've worn down, hence probably some of the rounder edges, things like that. But also, what does it mean?
What does it mean?
What does it mean? It's very clearly some kind of pattern.
Right. It is very clearly intentional.
Yeah.
And one thing you don't get from a photo like this is the scale, truly. Once you see people next to these stones walking amongst them, you realize, and again, I'll walk you through all the deets, but just how big and you'll see how heavy these stones truly are.
Also, how'd that not tip over?
Heavy. Real heavy. And I don't think England's known for earthquakes that really rattle the foundations, but I will say, many of the stones have fallen over.
Okay. I see some pieces on the ground, so I'm not...
Yes, totally. We'll show you a layout of what it is now, what is standing, what has fallen, and what is inferred to be missing. Some of these stones are implied to be there was a stone here, here, and here based on this formation.
Okay.
And so if there was, they're missing now.
Because it's just grass, which looks like really well-kept grass, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm I don't know if over time with the rain and it seems like there's a lot of morning dew that happens here, the grass wouldn't give and some of these would fall. But yeah, it seems like some of them have.
Yeah, I don't know what the grade is. I'm sure it's relatively flat. I imagine it's close to sea level, but not floodplain level. But yeah, there's definitely going to be wind and erosion on these stones over time. But yeah, some are maybe missing, some have fallen, and we'll dive right into that here in a second. But to really give you some context as we dive into this time period of when it is estimated that they were built, Stonehenge is said to be older than both the Great Pyramids and the Roman Empire. With the construction of the monument baffling historians, like I said, for thousands of years, people have looked at these things, and they've been ancient since ancient times. That's wild. And let me give you further context. The Great Pyramids themselves are currently estimated to have been built between approximately 2600 and 2500 BC. The Roman Empire itself is generally considered to have reigned from 27 BC to 395 AD. And this is where now I want to look at the layout of this kind of structure. The monument consists primarily of an inner horseshoe kind of shape and an outer ring, and I do have an image of that for you, so you have something to look at as I'm describing this in the next couple sections, but go ahead and pull that up.
Oh, wow. There's way more depth to this than I thought from the first picture. I think it's massive.
Yeah, dude. So you'll see the key here talks about sarsen stones, the fallen stones, and blue stones. I'll describe all of those and get really into the details here in a sec. What do you see?
I mean, this looks very intricate. Very intricate. Like, too intricate for those times, maybe. Like, how smart would the smartest person during, what, Neanderthal times?
Neolithic. I'm throwing out Neanderthal. I admit I don't know if there's a crossover there. That might be millennia.
That's the whole thing.
Oh yeah, I'll just say this. Neanderthal is the late Pliocene epoch. So spanning 400,000 to 40,000 years ago, we're not nearly that far back. I'm being a little facetious on that front.
Got it. Yeah, this looks, I don't know, was this inspired by religion or something way back then?
Good questions.
Not in the modern sense, but some type of communal sense.
Yeah.
You'd have to get people together to build this.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you would definitely need a large community to put this together. I love what you're thinking about. Maybe ritualistic or religious. Right. We'll definitely be tapping into that.
Or primal as opposed to what we know modern day.
Yeah. So having seen this now and looked at it, you know the general shape from the sky. But the outer ring, let's talk about that for a second. It is a continuous circular ring of sarsen standing stones, which measure about 13 feet or 4 meters tall and 7 feet or 2.1 meters wide. The ring itself isn't really all that big. The monument, it's kind of small. It's 108 feet wide in diameter or 33 meters. And these sarsen stones are a type of sandstone found in southern England. And that's where we're at, by the way, is southern England. If you want to locate on a major city, you go west of London, out near Bath. It's kind of in that general area. Again, Salisbury Plain. So these major stones are kind of local. And I'm kind of teasing where we're going with the blue stones later on, but each of these standing stones here in the outer ring weighs roughly 25 tons. And I know we all know a ton is a lot. We're going to talk about tons quite a bit here. So for context moving forward, if you want it in another way, 1 ton is equivalent to 1,000 kilograms or 2,200 pounds or so.
That's wild. I can only lift half that.
That's true. Only half. You could maybe push it over.
That's a little much. And they don't have science-based lifting like we do nowadays. So
Right. They didn't know anything about creatine.
They didn't know anything about creatine. They didn't have pre-workout. So I'm not quite sure. Though,
what if they discovered pre-workout 11,000 years ago or whatever?
It would have been some kind of drug.
And they lost it and it came back, in modern times. So they're all just jacked up on creatine, pre-workout, and protein.
They lost
and they're throwing these stones around.
I like the fact that pre-workout and creatine were lost to time.
Yeah. They said this is too powerful. Maybe that's where magic came from. Merlin was actually just a buff dude. I'm talking ripped. 18-pack.
Yeah, and then 18.
Yeah, dude. They went down to his knees.
We're born with our abs. If someone has 4, you can't make 2.
Listen, they never said they found the missing link. I'm
That's
just
true,
theorizing out here.
Yeah.
This is lost science.
Buff scientists.
So, as you astutely pointed out, these enormous stones are also topped horizontally by what's called supporting lintel stones. Now, these are smaller, obviously, but considering they're hoisted 13 feet in the air to sit on top, it is quite an astonishing feat because each of these weighs anywhere from 2 to 5 tons. For reference, that would be like hoisting an average adult elephant or 2 up on top of these things.
Man, so that's so intricate, because then they would have to use some type of system to transport. Like, where are these stones? Like, is there stones anywhere near here? Granted, it was so long ago, so the landscape has massively changed. But it looks pretty clear cut green grass all around. Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah. I think what's going to deeply impress you beyond the stones, which are impressive, there's a lot of knowledge that closes those gaps, how they were moved, perhaps how they were hoisted up. We don't have definitive answers. We have some really, really good ones. But what's going to really blow your mind is what's called Aubrey holes around this in the dirt and how those are still there. So I'm teasing that. We'll talk about those in a second. But before we do, I want to talk about that inner ring, that horseshoe shaped, because within this consists 5 freestanding, what they're called trilithons. These are arranged in a 45-foot wide horseshoe shape, and a trilithon is a structure that has 2 large stones acting as posts, essentially, again with another one going across the top, that lintel stone. So that's the official name for that shape, as you kind of described, that archway almost look. So while these inner ring stones look very similar and are proportionately similar to those in the outer ring, they're significantly taller. So standing next to one of these towering stone structures would be incredibly diminishing. We talked about the 13-foot tall ones, but these inner trilithons stand at a height of about 22 feet or 6.7 meters, with an estimated weight for just, I think, one of these stones, not the whole trilithon, 40 to 50 tons. And so you're now standing next to a 2-story tall, 40 to 50 ton, just enormous piece of earth.
That's ridiculous. Why? Why would you do that?
Because you could.
That's so much work. There's had to be some kind of like ritual or belief behind this.
Totally.
To put in that much time and effort and bring this many people into the fold, because you can't just do it as a single person or even a handful of people. Why? I get it. Like, I've always seen Stonehenge and be like, there's a bunch of stones up there. But now that we're like really looking at it and we're getting into how heavy they are, the shape of the formation, everything like that, it really is a why. Who? I want answers.
Right, dude. It's really interesting. I think you're right on the money. The fact that this is so big, so huge, so heavy does indicate that there's some sort of greater motivation. You would really need to be pushed for a purpose, some great purpose, in order to be, incentivized to do this. But you talk about a single person doing it. I don't believe a single person would have done this. Maybe they could have with a horde of animals helping pull things around. But it reminds me, so I wanted to look up his name. There's a man who was named Edward Leedskalnin, who had a megalithic creation called Coral Castle in, I believe, his backyard. And he would use pivot stones. Like, he would move these large stones, not nearly as large as Stonehenge, admittedly, but he would be able to move these and hoist them and get blocks on top of one another. And he would always do it when no one was looking. He would not let cameras in, not let anybody see his backyard when he's moving these. One day he kind of revealed one of his secrets, and he would just put on the concrete ground like a stone, and using leverage get these big blocks on them, and then as a single person he could get them to rotate around and move and things. Yeah, we'll kind of get into how these were moved and maybe how they were even hoisted up here in a second, but it's not entirely closed off to a single individual, but just the sheer size does seem to indicate some sort of community effort, 100%. So, looking now back at that image I showed you, the layout of the existing stones, you might have noticed that scattered around the obvious larger stones are a bunch of other stones, smaller ones called bluestones. And while bluestone refers to many different rock types around the world, here it's kind of used as a catch-all term for the various stones and fragments found at the site. And I'm talking about big stones anywhere from 1 to 4 tons, but also some that are like literal fragments that had been found. And according to research by Robert Ixer and Richard Bevins, the bluestones at Stonehenge represent about 46 different types of rock not native to the surrounding area. So like I said, sarsen stones, those hard stones, have been found and are local to the immediate English area. The bluestone types, I believe, mostly after testing them with various, they did radiocarbon dating and other geological studies to test these stones, They were found to mostly be indigenous to Wales, and we'll talk about that, but that's about 200 to 250 miles north by way of walking, not like a direct line. So a lot of these things came from quite a distance away.
I mean, we go back to the photo. Seeing water back there. Could they have been brought in overseas?
Now you're cooking.
Which is pretty wild to think back then, like sea travel.
It's hard to conceive of, and a lot of things that are wood decay or lost to time or maybe are dismantled or what have you, but it's not inconceivable, right?
It's not.
That a water vessel could carry something of this weight with the proper size and buoyancy.
That's just so oh man. For what?
For what?
What?
Yes.
But again, like, people do stuff because they believe in something.
Totally. I think you're right on the money. You know, I love that you're thinking about what the purpose is. It must be something big enough to truly motivate a group, likely a group of individuals. I got you thinking now. You saw the water in the background. I love where your head's on that. And yeah, you're really laying the foundation for some of the theories. I mean, we have some really strong theories attempting to answer maybe how it was done, but ultimately the biggest question of them all is truly why? Why was it done? And neither of those two questions have firm, proven, I should say, answers. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Shopify. You know that purple Shop Pay button you see when you're checking out online, the one that makes buying incredibly easy because it remembers your name, your card, and your address so you could just check out? Well, that is Shopify. And Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind businesses big and small. They make it incredibly simple to get your business off the ground, whether you're just getting started or have already built your own brand. I've used Shopify in the past, and I have to say, as somebody who loves coding but isn't very good at it, they make it super easy to build a powerful website that fits your brand, has every style and theme that you could possibly think of, and so it's super turnkey, as an individual even, to just go bang and have a powerful online platform to sell your products. It's so easy that once you see it, you'll never want to go back. And your customers will love it because they're going to see that Shop Pay button. It'll have all their details saved. They won't have to go digging out their credit cards or anything else. Shopify remembers everything for you and your customers. Shopify also helps businesses grow by providing everything that you need in one place, from managing your inventory to handling payments and even built-in marketing tools. Shopify has it all. And it's no surprise that major brands like Mattel and Gymshark also trust Shopify to power their online stores. Plus, it gives you the tools to spread your brand's word and keep customers coming back. Whether you're just getting started or scaling up, Shopify has you covered. If you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time to head over to Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/redweb. Go to shopify.com/redweb. One more time, that's shopify.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. We've all had those moments where we turn to friends, family, or even strangers for advice, but not everyone is equipped to help with deeper issues of life, especially when it comes to mental health challenges like relationships, anxiety, or stress. That's where BetterHelp comes in. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can help you work through life's struggles. Whether it's handling a tough situation or just needing someone to talk to, BetterHelp has you covered. With over 30,000 licensed therapists, you can find one who matches your needs and preferences. I've talked about my experience in the past with therapy and how it's such an important tool, but what I really do appreciate about BetterHelp is the flexibility. You can meet with their therapist from the comfort of your own space, your own familiar home, and if that therapist doesn't feel right for you, you can easily find somebody else, because that is a very critical part of therapy, is finding somebody that understands what you need, somebody that you feel comfortable with as well. And BetterHelp has that network to help you find that person. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's betterhelp.com/redweb. But talking about the construction now, obviously, Stonehenge is widely regarded as an oddity, not only given the placement, the formation of these stones, but as you pointed out, the fact that some of these are hoisted up on top, the peculiar, specific seeming intentional layout of, yes, the greater layout, but also the stone arches themselves, the triloliths. So combined with the seeming lack of technology historians believe that civilization had when this was crafted, it almost seems impossible. And this is where my own human instinct comes to play, which is it easy to look back 12,000 years and say, they were dumb? I don't know. For all intents and purposes, they had the same brain, just different technology at their disposal. And so you can't count out the fact that they're real scrappy, able to figure things out, and maybe things are just lost to time. But just because we don't know it doesn't mean they don't have the possible ways of going about it, you know?
I mean, I guess like if civilization and life were to reset itself here or evolve vastly over time, we have so much technology now that like tracks and archives things.
Mm-hmm.
But if humans were to have a huge jump in evolution, who's to say that, we weren't like insanely intelligent? They would look at us and be like, they were dumb,
Yeah.
They were so
maybe
simple-minded. How did they do this? How they make this building so high with these cranes, maybe, and these archaic mechanical things, as opposed to just levitating with your mind? I don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like something absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
Because essentially, like, we look at ourselves and we think we are the peak, right?
Yeah.
We're the best of the best, most intelligent. Nothing else is better. America.
I mean, give it a few hundred years, and right now, we'll look like we're the ones playing hoop and stick. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's easy to see it even localized when you look at a child, a toddler, an infant, and you're like, dang, you're just picking things up. You're so impressive. I'm like, yeah, people just, I think, are innately impressive. There's something unique about the brain and the way it works and the way we conceive of ourselves and society. We can perceive one another. That's kind of magic, but so is life. But the fact that we need to rob ourselves, this is kind of playing into one of the theories, the fact that we need to rob ourselves of that ingenuity and say, well, we couldn't have possibly done it. Oh, we totally did it. We just don't know how. But yeah, we'll get into those theories in a bit. But I think looking back at history and looking back at what we know currently as far as technology, I think what really makes this a little mind-shattering is that Stonehenge, by all great estimates, predates the wheel, the invention of the wheel, by roughly 500 years. And I will say the lines get very blurry here, depending on what timelines and what estimates you're looking at, but suffice to say, Stonehenge is widely believed to predate the wheel, by whatever the timeline is.
I mean, 500 years is a lot closer than you think. I don't know, man. That's a gap, especially with the lack of technology when it comes to communication and travel and everything. There could have very well been a different tribe or civilization on a different continent that had already invented it, and we just did not know, and we didn't figure that out, right? And we just first saw it or first thought of it as being conceived 500 years later.
Yeah, it's possible that just the earliest version of the wheel is lost, or we don't know it yet. We haven't found it yet, because I think the oldest wheel now is roughly from 3100 BC. And it's a wooden wheel, and it was found, I want to say, at the turn of the century, maybe around early 2000s. And so, yeah, we're still constantly evolving on that front. But regardless of that kind of blurry timeline, that's the current understanding, that's the current estimate. Regardless of that, it is widely believed that wheels were simply not used in the construction of Stonehenge based on all the evidence that we have currently analyzed with regards to the whole site, the stones, and things of that nature. I think that helps increase the impressive nature of this thing.
But I guess, like, over time, how do we know about landscape affecting, like, you know what I mean? Like, if they did use wheels, wouldn't that landscape just be lost to time? Like the tracks and like the markings and...
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I'm not an archaeologist, so I don't know exactly how they can confirm that. But I will say...
That's just the interesting thing. I mean, look, they're the professionals. I trust it. But it's just interesting to be like, there were no wheels used here. It's like, how would you know that?
Right. Maybe it's that we're very confident that they weren't because we don't have anything to push us that direction. But I will say, interestingly, there are still roads that were paved, obviously stones put down in like Rome, that exist today from that ancient time, and you can see where wheels over the many centuries of their existence have worn into the stones and things. But yeah, on the land, dude,
Right.
I could go dig a hole, and then I'm sure time would fill that in. It wouldn't be forever.
Right.
But also, again, I keep teasing these Aubrey holes. We'll talk about it. But there's definitely some manipulation of the earth around this monument that has stood for thousands of years. So all that is to say is, I don't know. I'm not a buff brain, not a buff scientist.
That's true.
You know what I mean? I'm very curious. Task Force, we've got theories on that. But that's kind of the general, broader opinion right now. While its formation has, of course, confused many for years, modern technology has led historians to believe that the monument was crafted in several phases. So we're going to break those down. But these phases took nearly 2,000 years to complete. That also twists my brain. 2,000 years from the early iterations of Stonehenge to what we see today.
So there's just people working on it for generations?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's many generations. My grandpa's grandpa worked on it, and his grandfather before him, and his grandpa, and then about 30 minutes later, and his grandfather before
His
him.
grandfather. That's just so much dedication. I think more so than how we did it, I want to know why we did it.
Listen, here's a little theory before we get to the theories. What if, they've got a little bit of housing, they got a little bit of agriculture,
Right.
but they didn't have, modern times. We got all these things to distract us. We're swiping on our phones. Maybe their version of a screen was, guess I better start hauling rock again. Just keep chipping away at the old structure, Just something to do when I'm not doing things. I don't know.
That's true. What do you do when there's nothing else to distract you?
Yeah. And then a Neolithic mom comes through and says, stop playing with those rocks. You're rotting your brain. You're
Yeah.
losing your muscles. Get over here and get back on, get back in the agriculture, because we don't eat without that. We don't eat stone.
That's most important. This is just something extra.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Man, if you were dropped back in time at that point, good luck communicating. English is very new. Okay, so while its formation has confused many for years, modern technology has led historians to believe that the monument was crafted in several phases and took nearly 2,000 years to complete. Archaeologists were able to gather information about the creation of Stonehenge based on radiocarbon dating, basically figuring out how old these things are, but also using what's called stratigraphy, which is looking at the strata lines in these rocks and aligning that with geographical knowledge to figure out timelines for when stones were moved or gathered. And these reports are kind of varying by timeline, but the rough estimates are as follows. Phase 1 was around 3000 BC, Phase 2 began around 2600 BC, and Phase 3 was a little bit longer, lasting between 2600 and 2000 BC, though there are several mini phases tucked into Phase 3 that go as far as 1600 BC. And so I'll give you a very high level of what each of those phases kind of looked like.
How do we know this? This is so wildly accurate.
Yeah, so we're looking at the age of these stones. Oh man, this gets way deeper than my very casual understanding of geography and geology. If you look at the layers of the earth, you can see kind of generally when these stones were laid down and when they would have been exposed. And so you can very broadly estimate the timeline from there. There's a lot of trust that I'm building in because I just don't have that very deep, I don't have that doctoral level of knowledge, but
There's a scientist here that grew up having a lot of pet rocks and then got the degree in rocks and
Doctor
studied
of
rocks
rocks.
and loved rocks and rock formations and became the world's leading expert on rocks.
Yes.
And then they were one day called upon and they said, this is my time. This is what I was made for. This is what everything's all about.
And they got real good at instinct too. They would use tools, but somehow they could just taste the difference. They
Yeah. They just went up to the stones and started licking all the rocks.
Oh, that's a fine vintage. Fine vintage about 5,000 years ago.
Do you mind if I take a shaving of this rock for science?
You mind if I just percolate some water through this rocks? It will become a fantastic vintage. So let's get a little bit more detailed. Phase 1, again, believed to have started about 5,000 years ago in the Neolithic Age. They believe deer antlers were used to carve out a massive ditch and bank formation in a circular formation around Stonehenge. And I do have an image for you to kind of see. It's a drawing of what we believe Stonehenge would have looked like when fully present and accounted for, all the stones and everything. So take a look and you'll see that large earthen ditch outside of the formation of stones.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive.
Mm-hmm.
This is all, I mean, it looks gorgeous if that's what Stonehenge was supposed to look like.
Yeah. And that ditch, that kind of divot that goes all around Stonehenge there, actually still exists to this day. And I think that's what's so wild to me, because my instinct is with you, Fredo. I would have believed that over time that with rain and earth movement or what have you, that dirt itself would have just kind of softened up, gotten muddy, and reformed into a flatter system over 5,000 years. But it's still kind of there.
Oh, so then that's probably why we know that like wheels weren't. Because I mean, if they were making a ditch like that and over time it still has signs of existence, then yeah, maybe. I mean, because these wheels would have made giant like markings.
Yeah.
Because these stones are massive. In
Potentially.
weight and size. Potentially, yeah.
It does seem to indicate that the Earth, yes, moves over time and foliage grows, decays, creates more dirt, etc. So you would think that even just the biomass of that grass growing, cutting, dying, what have you.
Only does that so much.
Yeah. So we have the ditch and then a bank, which is kind of a hump of earth on the inside. And then moving inward towards those stones from the outside, you also have these pits in a circular formation, all these small holes. Those are the Aubrey holes that I was talking about. And again, I believe that those have been seen. They might have been softened over time, but they're named after John Aubrey, who was the archaeologist who discovered them back in the 17th century. This seems to be the first of the formations, more earthen-based and less stone-based. Some scholars believe that some of these pits once held large timber posts. The site was believed to be a cremation cemetery or some sort of burial site. Again, we're talking theories here, but the idea here that I want to get across is that phase 1 was mostly earthen, and theoretically some maybe timber, some wood, but no stone yet. Moving into phase 2, that's when, again, several hundred years go by, the bluestones are brought in, and while 43 of those remain today, it is believed that upwards of 80 stones in total were placed in a circular fashion, as I described to you earlier. And those are kind of inferred based on, if you look at the shape, it would seem like there are random gaps. And if you're like, well, if the shape is mostly circular, I would assume that one would be here and maybe in these other places. Phase 3 comes through, again, starting maybe somewhere around 2600 BC. And this is when the large Sarsen sandstone rocks were placed and those lintel stones laid across them horizontally. And while 50 arsen stones are still present today, it's possible that there was a time where the site actually contained even more of these. Some of them, as you kind of pointed out, have since fallen over, but again, we're inferring based on the formation and the gaps that there might have been other ones. And that's where you get the drawing that tries to, oh, if those were here, this is what that theoretical shape would be. Beyond that, though, there were many sub-phases within that greater phase of 3. Like, I believe they're like Roman numeral 1 through 5, with a lot more detailed breakdown. Again, I could do a huge TED Talk just on that. But by this point of the mini phases of phase 3, the bulk of the construction had been done. But radiocarbon dating suggests that work continued on Stonehenge until around 1600 BC. Specifically, it showed that the bluestones had been repositioned multiple times. And maybe this is from erosion, the bottom is protected from it, the top is not, and so you can kind of compare the top and bottom, I'm guessing. But when doing this radiocarbon dating, I think this is when it was found that the stones, these bluestones, weren't local. I know I said this before, but I want to be very specific. These bluestones were estimated to be from 220 miles away from Stonehenge in southwest Wales. And to be more specific on the larger Sarsen stones, again, they were local, estimated to be about 20 miles north of Salisbury Plain, where Stonehenge is. So this then leads us to one of the big questions about Stonehenge. How were these stones moved? So historians hypothesize that the large Sarsen stones were transported via what's called sledging. And I do have an image for you to give you an idea of what this system would look like.
Oh, interesting. So it's just 5 logs horizontally, 2 logs on top of that, opposite. and I guess just rolling it.
Yeah.
And then they would just take the back ones and put up front and then roll it.
Yes. So these large stones, like you pointed out, would almost be strapped down via ropes to a kind of wooden track where it has these beams with cross-beam supports, and then this whole sled-like apparatus would glide across loose rolling logs, those 5 underneath. And so as it would glide over the last one, it would then be picked up, run around front, placed back down on the ground, and that would kind of create this almost endless rolling path for the sled to continuously move along.
I mean, again, that's so much work.
Yeah, it is.
I can conceive the how in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, with simple things like that. That's just why. That's so
Why?
much time and effort. But again, it could be a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
It could be someone with a lot of influence that wanted to construct something in their honor, or to honor gods or a ritual, or maybe even back then they wanted to communicate with beings from another world or something.
Yeah.
And this was just some kind of symbol, beacon in which to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Nazca lines and you wonder maybe a little bit of how, but certainly why.
Yes.
And especially something like this, or certainly the Nazca lines, are primarily meant to be seen from above. And now we fly planes and we have satellites, and so we go whatever. But back then, what was really seeing it from above but the gods or whatever religious figures of the time?
True.
I think you're really onto something. And when we talk about the blue stones, yeah, they weren't as heavy as these sarsen stones, but it was believed that in order for these to get to the site, well over 350 kilometers, that to your gut instinct, they would have to go over rivers, streams, and potentially the ocean, depending on the route they took. And so, yeah, maybe they made rafts or large boats that would be able to carry several 1,000-pound stones. But beyond this, it gets very unclear as to the specific time that these stones were moved. We have the general estimates, but the logistics remain a mystery. Did one journey transport several stones? Could they only move one stone at a time? How frequently did they take these journeys? Was it once a year, once a season? Was it daily? They just had like a train of people going at it? Who knows?
Right, and then also through generations. So, who's organizing all this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who's keeping this alive and organized over generations? Because you could have, I don't know, a whole group of people or an individual wanting to spearhead this. Mm-hmm. But to get the next generation and the next one and the next and the next to care passionately about completing this is a whole new thing.
You're totally right.
Like, if I got to wake up every day and organize or push these stones all across, it kind of gets hard to, have the motivation to do so if great-grandfather, great 10 generations, 20 generations back, this was his ideology, you know what I mean? His project.
Right. It's very hard to have intergenerational care, at least in modern times. Maybe that was a sign of how strong their society was, that they could carry this weight, or it is a sign of, to your continuing question, as we continue to bury the lead, we'll get to the theories, but maybe the greater purpose. And if it was ritualistic or religious based, that's where I can really see the care carrying from generation to generation.
Yeah.
I could also see this being a prank. 20 miles in the Neolithic time is quite some distance. What if it's one group up north is just this'll be funny. Let's just send our friends down south stones forever. And then the people down south are like, we keep getting these stones. I think we'll just stand them up and get them out of here.
Yeah.
Stack them. But yeah, that's very good questions. Final details on logistics, because it is, I think, really interesting, but also kind of important to some of the theories. It's been theorized that oxen or cattle were used in combination with other methods to tow these stones a great distance, and this is because archaeologists have seen bones of Neolithic cattle that showed, their feet, and showed a lot of wear in the pattern of their feet, which would suggest the consistent pulling of very, very heavy loads. And again, this begs the question, why? These are very valuable resources, these animals, and to dedicate them towards a structure versus potential agriculture, meat, or other things, it definitely kind of keys us in, I think, on a purpose.
Yeah, I think there would have to be, that's why I kind of go with a ritualistic purpose or religious purpose.
Yeah.
because of the fact that you really have to have people believing in this thing
Totally.
instead of just like this would look cool, or I have money. And even then, like, or like power, influence, like that wears over generations. Like once you start pulling generations in, it can wear, sometimes, look at different countries and stuff. There's a lineage that still holds test of time, but I don't know. It's just something about it. I think it's more ritual or belief.
And again, maybe it's a modern time versus an ancient time thing, and priorities have changed and technology has shifted things, but it's really hard to conceive of 150 years ago. We're talking about a project that spanned hundreds of years, if not millennia. I don't know, it's so deeply impressive. It's why it's so interesting. Now, I do want to be a completionist about this. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one of the less popular theories. Some people believe that these stones might have been moved during the Ice Age, carried on ice, deposited on the plain there when the ice melted. I will say the current issue with this, unless some sort of big revelation happens as far as timelines on things, is the Ice Age ended approximately 11,700 years ago. This would give roughly a 9 to 10,000 year gap between the Ice Age ending and the construction of Stonehenge. So, a huge monster of a gap there. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the idea of how they were able to angle these upright, maybe even how they were able to hoist these stones on top of others. And that is the idea of maybe using an A-frame and using a heck of a lot of mechanical advantage, using ropes and levers, pulleys and things to get these stones upturned. I do have an image for how this would have looked in theory, but this would involve placing the stone on a pre-dug hole that was kind of slanted. We've seen people in modern times try to recreate this at a different and smaller scale, but then they would have wooden stakes in a cross formation that would then be placed at the back of the hole, resting behind the stone.
This is so elaborate.
It's very elaborate. Ropes would then be attached to these stakes and to an A-frame that would be used for leverage, which you'd then pull on that, it would hoist it up. But the existing holes, we're talking, I think the Aubrey holes maybe were part of this, but the existing hole within this would then be filled with rubble to secure the stone. But the biggest issue with all this is that the proximity of the stones would make this nearly impossible for the ropes to be long enough to pull this up. But I don't know. Again, I'm kind of glossing over it here at a higher level, but it is one of the modern theories.
That's so intricate.
Yeah.
That's such a complex system. Again, why?
Yeah.
I always saw Stonehenge and I'm like, it's a bunch of rocks.
It's
up
a bunch
there.
of rocks.
Hey, who knows how they get up there? Who knows why they're up there?
Yeah.
Now, like, hearing details, this upsets me. I don't know why. I don't know why. Like, they're massive, they're huge, they weigh multiple tons.
Yeah.
Like, man, you had so many resources dedicated to this, and so it's just, what was your reason? Who spearheaded this, and why did everyone believe this person? I think that in itself, imagine the documentary on that person.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so now the time we've all been waiting for. I think all of this information was necessary to lay the foundation for what these theories stand upon for the most part. You know, what's impressive, I think, and let me know if you've learned anything thus far, because what I think is impressive is that historians have largely been able to fill in the gaps of knowledge, where these stones came from, logistically, maybe how they got there. We don't know things for a fact. It's not bulletproof, but it is very impressive and does really give a lot of confidence. But I think, you know, like I said, when you have an ancient monument with mysterious origins and more questions than answers, it's bound to happen that you get a bunch of theories trying to fill it in. And we have them from the fantastic to the more grounded. So I think you know where we're going with this, but maybe not as far. I don't think you know how far we're really going to go. So let's go real far back, 12th century. There was a writer named Geoffrey of Monmouth who composed a history of England that, despite being largely fictional, was taken as fact well into the 16th century. In his account of this fictional England history, he wrote that Stonehenge was created by the wizard Merlin.
Merlin, yeah.
18-pack, lifting these stones on his back.
Okay.
So Geoffrey wrote, very interestingly, that the Salisbury Plain was the resting place of hundreds of British nobles who were murdered by Saxons in the middle of the 5th century. The story then says that King Orioles Ambrosia sent an army to Ireland in search of a ring of stones known as the Giant's Ring. The Giant's Ring was said to be built by ancient giants from blue stones. And so we're not talking about a ring that you slip on your finger, the one ring to rule them all. We're talking about a monument, a heavy, several-ton, maybe circular instrument, but still a giant stone. It is said while his army defeated the Irish, they were unable to move such heavy stones. So Merlin then was employed to use his wizardry to move these stones across the sea and to arrange them into a configuration that we see today. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, historians or English literature buffs, but I believe the stone in my first reading was one instrument, but I believe it also, based on what we're putting context clues together, might have been this entire formation of stones. The ring that Stonehenge now lies in could have been the Giant's Ring. Suffice to say, the legend says that King Orioles is buried at Stonehenge, as well as his brother Uther. And if you recognize that name, you might know him better as King Arthur's father. So while Geoffrey's story was taken as truth for several centuries, Stonehenge predates the idea of Merlin, or all the stories inspired by him, by thousands of years. And so now we're entering a point where we're very interestingly going to see theories come and go almost in a linear timeline sort of way. And so now we're in the 17th century, and this is where the next major theory stood the test of time until modern times. So now here in the 17th century, we come back once again to archaeologist John Aubrey, who theorized that Stonehenge was created by Druids. Now, I casually knew of the word Druids from high fantasy reading, Dungeons and Dragons of all things. But again, this is the same archaeologist who discovered the Aubrey holes, and it seems that John Aubrey and his colleague came to this conclusion because they believed that Stonehenge was created by local residents, and the Druids were the only prehistoric British priests mentioned in texts, like historical texts, and so they're kind of like, well, the only people around to focus this effort, lead this effort as you're kind of seeking that entity, Fredo, would be the Druids, based on what they knew. So a Druid is a high-ranking priest classification of ancient Celtic cultures. Druids play a large role in Irish mythology, generally seen as having some sort of mystical ability. They have also been referenced as practitioners of human sacrifice in ancient Greek and Roman texts, but either way, what we're identifying, Fredo, is exactly what your instincts are looking for. Some sort of leader figure, some sort of religious, maybe ritualistic figure that can keep this charge going on for generations.
Yep.
Not a familial thing, not a generational thing, but like a religious, ritualistic thing. And this makes a lot of sense. Aubrey's theory was widely popularized by an antiquarian named William Stukely, and these two believed that the presentation of the stones had a calendrical role in Druid ritual. And from that, there is an illustration for this that I want to reference. But in this image, you can see that it says, quote, Druids sacrificing to the sun in their temple called Stonehenge. Again, we're still firmly in the world of theory, but they're drawing on a few conclusions to make this theory.
Oh, this is getting all like, I don't know, was it like fantasy based?
Yeah. A lot of this is tapped for fantasy, certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Druids and like video games, shape-shifting and stuff. And
Now, I don't know if there's a lot of like, I'll be honest here and tip my ignorance a little bit, but I don't know if there's a lot of like prejudice happening with Druids because I myself don't know a lot about it. So I don't want to like misappropriate a person's or like this group of people here. This is just what Stukely believes the Druids used this space for sacrifices, other significant events, and things of that nature. Now, what's interesting is while this kind of makes sense based on maybe what we see from William Stukely and John Aubrey, is that this was commonly believed up until the 1960s, when new findings reported that Stonehenge once again completely predates the theory. The first written record of Druids was 2,000 years after Stonehenge was built. And so again, we're working with something so ancient that we don't have written record to help corroborate these theories that we have yet.
Right.
So now we've seen two theories come and go, both lasting centuries, both being widely believed, and now we're in the 1960s. I think you know where we're going from here, but in 1968, a man named Eric von Däniken published a book called Chariots of the Gods: Unsolved Mysteries of the Past. This book details that ancient aliens had been able to communicate with ancient civilizations, resulting in ancient religions and technologies that might have been lost to time. It lists Stonehenge, as well as Easter Island and the pyramids, as the work not of ancient man, but of aliens. And I think we know now, we've talked about ancient aliens top to bottom, there's a show all about it, but after the release of this book, this theory gained a lot of popularity. And this is where I'm like, listen, we're robbing our own ancient ingenuity to say it must have been something else out there.
Something else. We didn't do it. It was something else. It was too advanced, too much work. Something else came in and helped.
Right. And interestingly, sightings of strange flying objects over Stonehenge happen quite frequently. But when looking at this, it raised a question. Okay, have strange objects been seen over it over centuries? Or is it kind of lining up with the advent of this new theory? And it does seem that sightings of mysterious flying objects over Stonehenge are a more recent phenomenon. And so I start to think, okay, well, maybe people are then primed by this theory to see stuff.
Exactly. And then with technology and drones and everything, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, maybe. Also, I'd be very interested to see like the age, the generations that are reporting these things. You know what I mean? In the same sense of like, grandma, you just read that on Facebook. It's not real.
Right.
Or it's AI generated, etc. You know, are like all age ranges reporting this? Or is it just like everyone in their 40s or 50s and up going like, I saw something, and it's just like a plane with a light or something, or a drone.
It's just a hot air balloon.
Exactly.
Yeah. Honestly, I think people of all ages see UFOs, but I see where you're coming from on that one. Yeah. At what point is it the believers? Is it skeptics included? You know, I don't know. But one last element that people cite in addition to this aliens theory is that Stonehenge does lie on what's called a ley line, supposedly making it a magnet for supernatural activity. Ley lines are a series of alignments between prominent landmarks across the globe and other historical sites that are said to carry a supernatural energy, like the idea that portals might be open to other dimensions, that, you know, the past can come crashing in, that aliens can arrive, that interdimensional beings, that ghosts, etc., etc. I don't know if there's a lot really proven on that. It is interesting that a lot of these things, you know, land on a line.
So they happen around this area.
Yeah. But coincidences can be substantiated by seeking the evidence, trying to reverse engineer evidence to substantiate your beliefs, etc. But I think the biggest wrinkle in this particular theory, especially the sightings of flying objects over Stonehenge, is that many, if not all of these, could be chalked up to the nearby Royal Air Force Base. You have Boscombe Down, which regularly flies planes and new aircraft of all kinds over Salisbury Plain. The real kicker here is, because I'm with you, I want to believe.
But of course there's an airfield, so it makes it questionable.
You're right. But on top of that, this base sits just about 3 miles or 5 kilometers east. So it is close.
That's very, very, very close.
Yeah. It doesn't stop there from being hot spots in England of UFO sightings, and it also doesn't change the fact that we've also seen a high level of UFOs around Air Force bases and things, but is it aircraft or is it aliens looking at our weaponry? Right. Who knows? But this
is... I'm going to go with aircraft on this one.
Yeah. Again, they're out there, they're thicked up, they're coming for us, but...
Hey, yeah. Okay, hold on. They're thicked up and they're coming for us?
Well,
I'm going to have to be on the front lines for scientific purposes. I just...
Draft me. I'll be brave. Just for science.
I'll be the brave one. Don't worry. I'll be the first one to step in line. I'll sort this out. I will sort it out.
I will sort this out behind closed doors. Trust me. I can do it. Leave me with them. All right. Okay. So... many other smaller theories do exist. people have talked, and there's not a lot to say about each of these, so I'll kind of be brief, but there's one more that I think carries the most weight. Pun kind of intended, stones heavy, but some of the theories include that this might have been a healing site or a site believed to be for the purpose of healing. Maybe it was for ancestor worship, which would close the gap on the idea of multi-generational efforts going into this.
Right.
A social unification project, which does kind of go into my mind of, hey, if we have nothing else going on and this is a grand social effort for community, I mean, we are a communal peoples. We were built for storytelling, sitting around the campfire and being with one another, even in a nonverbal context. Our whole system is built to support one another, and maybe this is just an advanced iteration of that, an advanced symptom of that. Perhaps it was a territorial marker. There are also some theories that say that this could have been an acoustic or sound ritualistic arena, that some theorize that when the stones were all put together and one stood in the middle, that the stones would amplify the sounds, maybe the humming, the singing, or the speaker's voice that stood in the middle. Hard to test now because many of them are gone, but it is possible.
Right.
But this does lead me to one of the theories that I think at least makes the most sense. Even if it's simple, even if it doesn't answer why they did it, it is an intentional purpose and it makes some sense. So some believe that the stones were placed in this way to act as a kind of astronomical calendar. On the days of the summer and winter solstices, specifically if you stand in the middle of the stone circle, the rising and setting of the sun nearly perfectly align with the formation. Some even say that the spring and autumn equinoxes also have a small but minor role to play in this alignment. But to be specific, on the day of the winter solstice, the sun would set between the two standing pillars of the tallest trilithon, which would indicate why it's the tallest, maybe why it's perfectly lined up with that setting sun. And then on the opposite side of the year, on the day of the summer solstice, it's not a perfect alignment, but the sun does rise right next to what's known as the heel stone, H-E-E-L, stone, on an independent block of stone that lies roughly 80 meters northeast of the monument. However, it's reported that there is a hole next to the heel stone that could have housed a potentially bigger or different stone, and if it did have that stone, it would make more sense because then that summer solstice sun would rise right between them. This would make it so that the sunrise would be perfectly framed in this formation. People have also looked at notches in these stone formations, and maybe these were made later, maybe if things didn't line up properly, but suffice to say, it does line up very strongly with the astronomical happenings of our solar system. And I think that does make a lot of sense. It doesn't answer all the questions behind it, like the greater purpose, but to me, that really stands out, and it almost seems too intentional to not be part of the purpose.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I don't know, I guess it's like a complex, intricate, artsy way of doing it. But it lines up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Is there another shoe that's going to drop here as to why it doesn't line up and doesn't work?
The biggest wrinkle is, on the summer solstice, it doesn't perfectly line up, but again, it has been theorized that if another stone were there where a hole has been identified, then it would line up a little bit better. But that's really the biggest wrinkle. The equinoxes don't perfectly line up in certain ways, but they line up somewhat. And so, if you're looking at an agricultural-based society, it would matter. The sun is the origin of many gods across many cultures, across many locations on Earth. And so, observing the sky, the movement of the sun, the seasons coming and going are all of great import, because whether it's God-oriented or simply season-oriented, all of these things drove life, drove growth. And so it would make sense that one would want to maybe mark this in a permanent way so it could be passed down for generations. And for that reason, maybe that's why they felt it so essential over these long millennia to build this everlasting structure.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that.
I think it's poetic. I think it's beautiful. I think it gets us as close as possible as we can in here. 2025, an answer. But yep, research still continues to be conducted on the site. You can still go there to this day. I have a friend who grew up nearby, near Bath, and he says, and his mother still lives there. And even still, it leaves a large impression on the English who live by it and the many tourists that come to check it out. And they believe, regardless of what you feel religiously, spiritually, many come away feeling that the veil is thinnest there, that there is something that transcends us, whether it be in a timeline, whether it be in a heritage kind of way, or maybe it is something greater than that. Maybe it is something dimensional, spiritual, or something like that. But I don't know. Like I said, I could go on and on. There's so many greater details that I feel like I'm glossing over. Of course, this episode is one of the longest we've done in a while, but I love Stonehenge. I love the questions it asks. I love the theories that are posited. It's just a beautiful place, and I hope to go there someday and kiss the stone, taste it, see what a 5,000-6,000 year old stone tastes like. And then they'll kick me out and I'll never be able to go back, but worth it.
But you already got what you wanted.
I already got my shaving.
Yes.
Well, this has been the very interesting historical mystery that is Stonehenge. As we come to a close, Fredo, any questions that still remain on your mind? Any inclinations that you might have?
I mean, more so than anything, it's just like the dedication that it went into making this thing wild. For what I believe to be the simplest thing, which is just the solstice. Damn. Hey, kudos to them. They must have been really bored, or the dedication was just, loyalty and dedication was just different back then.
That's a great point. The effort to purpose ratio. Some people are like, I don't roll out of bed for this, that, or the other.
Right.
And I'm like, these folks got up out of bed for centuries to keep this one going. And I love that you stayed on that, because I never thought about it that way. And in a greater way, I find that there's a comfort in that, a beauty in that, and I don't know, a motivation. Are we getting motivational out here? There's a motivation in that. All right. Well, Task Force, as we come to a close, as always, we love your theories. Each and every episode has a little thread on our Discord, so you ever have a thought, a question, an answer, something that we kind of talked about that you wanted to posit on openly, come on over to our Discord. Access is available via redwebpod.com, and you can sign up just like Bubbly Sunny, who was our newest buff mind of the Task Force. Thank you for signing up. Of course, another buff mind of the week is Mads. And then we also have our squonks to talk about. We got Broman, Jordan Chase, and Neo Trickster, just to name a few. So watch out. Fredo's got your name down. You might be melting soon. But welcome aboard while you're still solid. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.